What's going on, guys? Brian from bdwoodworkingcompany.com. Today we have a fun little project planned. I'm going to take a tabletop that has been heavily damaged and replace the top only. The legs are still good, as is the skirt, so I'm going to hold on to those, but I thought it would be a fun little project to replace the tabletop. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to start by measuring the length and the width of the table. This will help us later on in the project when we are making our crosscuts. As you can see, it measures 40 inches by 40 inches. This is just to show you some of the damage that this table has taken. It's pretty weathered from sitting out in the rain for a couple of months. I also used it as a work table for a backyard project, and you can see where the circular saw blade has cut into it. So this tabletop is no good, needs to be replaced. Right here I'm just removing the screws that hold the skirt to the tabletop. Also, the skirt, in addition to being screwed in, was also glued. So you want to be as careful as possible when removing this because we are trying to salvage as much of this table as possible. So really it's just going to take a few light taps with a hammer on different sections of each side of the skirt to knock that loose. Again, be kind of careful with it because we want to salvage this. All right, so now that I have the pieces that I want to salvage taken apart, the next step is to get them sanded down and prepared for stain. So that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to start with 80 grit sandpaper in order to get the finish off of the skirt as well as the legs. Once I'm done getting the finish off, I will move up to 120 grit sandpaper to get a smoother finish. I'll spare making you watch the process of me sanding all this down. It's a simple process, but it is fairly time consuming. You'll see what it looks like when I'm all done. All right, I love sanding, said no woodworker in history. Anyway, now that we are all done with that, we're gonna start making our cross cuts so that we can build the tabletop. By my calculations, I should be able to get about 3 pieces out of a 10-foot board. It's gonna take me 7 boards, so I will get started on that. All right, the next step in the process is to joint the edges of the boards that I just cut. I don't actually have a jointer, so I'm going to utilize a process that I learned off of YouTube using my table saw to join the edges. I'll provide a link at the bottom of that video that I learned this technique from. I start by using a 36-inch level that I have against the table saw fence. I cut off just a small sliver of the other side of the board. One thing that I forgot to show in the video is once I run all the boards through the level, I then want to flip the board around and use the fence itself now that I have a guaranteed flat edge. Okay, so what we're doing now is kind of the fun part. You get to place these boards in such a way that you think would look the nicest. I kind of try to match the grain the best you can. I mean, obviously they're from different boards, so the grain's going to look a little bit different. But you can get it kind of close. But this is where it's kind of starting to look like a table. All right, once you get it figured out where you want your boards, it helps to label them. That way you don't get them mixed up, so just numerical order is fine. 8 pieces. Okay, so what the next process is, I'm going to use pocket hole joinery to join these together. So you start with pocket holes and then you glue it. So I'm going to show you how to do that right quick. I set my drill for the lightest setting there is because I do not want to go all the way through. This is 3/4 inch material, so 3/4 inch material calls for 1.25 inch pocket hole screws. That's what we're going to use, but it still can go all the way through, which we want to try to avoid. So keep in mind that the majority of the work is going to be done by the glue. The pocket screws are really just kind of assisting to hold things in place while the glue dries. But this is Type Bond 2 premium wood glue. You can pick this up at Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever. So the first thing we want to do is we want to run the glue across the top of the board. If you didn't make a mess, you didn't use enough glue. So it doesn't need to be real tight, but just tight enough to where you have some glue squeeze out from the seams there. I'm gonna wait probably about 30 minutes for that to kind of dry up, and then I'm gonna scrape the glue off. I find that much easier than trying to wipe it up while it's wet. But you definitely don't want it to dry like that overnight, because that is a lot of sanding to get up. And then also, if you don't get all of it up, it'll ruin your stain process. So we're gonna let this sit like this overnight, and then we will finish up tomorrow. All right, so what we want to do now is we want to get the tabletop as clean as we possibly can in order to prepare it for stain. So what I'm doing here is I am vacuuming up the sawdust with a shop vac, and then from there what I'll do is I will use mineral spirits to wipe up as much of it as I possibly can, because we really don't want sawdust and other debris getting mixed in with our stain. It really shows up on the finished project. If you're going to go with wood stain, you want to get both of these products. I'm not sponsored by these guys, but I have seen the best results with this. You want to start off with the pre-stain, and then once you get that applied, then you can move on to the actual wood stain itself. These are very easily accessible. You can get them pretty much anywhere. Alright, so the first product is the Minwax pre-stain. Once you get that applied, you want to give it a good, 15-20 minutes or so. I really just wait for it to be completely dry, and then once that's dry, you can go ahead and move on to your actual stain. This is an important step to prevent blotchiness within your stain. Now that the pre-stain has had a chance to dry, we can go ahead and apply this stain. I'm going with a dark walnut. You can use anything you want to get that on there, whether it be a brush, an old t-shirt that you tore apart, or whatever. It doesn't really matter. There is no special trick to getting this on there. Just get it on there as evenly as possible, and then once you are done, wipe off any excess stain. From there, you want to give it about 24 hours to dry before you apply any kind of top coat. So we've given the stain at least 24 hours to dry now. So what we want to do is we want to get a top protective coat on the table, not just to protect it, but to make it shine. The steps will be the same for the table legs as well as the skirt. I'll just show you how I do it with the table. So I am using a water-based polyurethane. You can get this Home Depot, those again. Now, two things you want to try to avoid when applying this are air bubbles and brush strokes. So you want to make sure you stir the poly, because if you shake it, that'll create air bubbles. You don't want that. So stir it with a clean stir stick, which I will do to here. Alright, and what I want to do is I'm going to get it on there with a brush. Get it brushed on there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do once I get it on that spot is I'm just going to run one continuous brush stroke. That's to eliminate any brush strokes. And then you're just going to continue that throughout the rest of the table. So I'm all done applying the first coat of polyurethane to the table legs and tail skirt. What we want to do now is give it a couple of hours to dry, and then we will go over it with 220 grit sandpaper very lightly, and then apply a second coat. You can apply as many coats as you like. Generally it takes 3 or 4 coats. It all depends on the look that you're going for. So you just keep repeating that process until you get that final look that you're looking for. Alright, so the polyurethane has had several hours to dry now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 220 grit sand block and I am going to lightly sand the surface. I've been woodworking for several years now, and even though I continuously get better and better from one project to the next, I still make some silly mistakes from time to time. I've never actually used mineral spirits on a surface that's already been stained. I've always used it to clear sawdust off of something that I've already sanded down. So with that, I had no idea that it could be used to remove stain. It wasn't a huge deal in the end because I still liked the final look. However, it was significantly lighter than I had intended it to be. So just something to keep in mind when you're using chemicals. Make sure it's not something that will ruin your product. Here I'm adding another coat of polyurethane. I'm going to keep repeating this step until I get the look and the feel that I want. All right, so for those of you with experience with polyurethane, I'm sure that triggered your OCD a little bit. And believe me, a few years ago it would have mine too. I've seen all kinds of different methods on how to properly apply poly, and it wasn't until I saw this method that I thought, why not give it a shot? Really, all you need to do is just get it on there as evenly as possible. And then once I get it all on there, then I'm going to make one smooth brush stroke from one end to the other. That way it pops all of the air bubbles and eliminates the brush strokes. I've never had any issues with it since applying it this way, and really it seems like the easiest way to do it. So I just got done applying the third coat of polyurethane to this tabletop. I think that's about all it's going to take for me. I'll give this a couple of hours to dry, and then the next step will be to reassemble this table and get it looking like an actual table. This table has a 2-inch overhang, so here I'm just measuring 2 inches out from the edge, tracing a line around the table, and then I will just place the skirt around that accordingly and screw it into the table. things up for this video. If you liked what you saw or found it helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button. I will have more content coming soon.